Okay. All right. Yes. Let's get back on track. Blame, conflict. I would like you to put in the chat box, please, if you're here for a personal reason that is family, or whether you're here because of workplace. It just has my brain kind of better focused on what we were talking about. Both personal, family. Okay, great. Thank you.
Both personal, workplace. I'm a manager and want to support frontline staff and supervisors. I'm here for volunteer groups, workplace. I'm thinking about family reasons, but also workplace. Either would be helpful, both.
Oh my goodness, my apology again. I do not know what I am doing incorrectly, and let me just be more cautious. All right. Okay. So number of people, I'm just going to check the chat box, answered that question for me. And let me see here. Thank you. Oh, it's all disappeared. Anyway, I saw sort of a mixture, and I'm going to have to really speed. And I apologize for not being on board here. So the world is full right now, very topical topic. And just Manisha, just affirm that you can hear me, please.
Yes, yes, Patricia.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, right now, oh my goodness, between war breaking out and continuing, as we know, in the Far East, and images on the television. I can certainly get discouraged like anybody else. Our youth blaming the older generation for what we've done to the planet. There is a difference between blame and being responsible and holding people accountable and holding people responsible for their decisions. So not that I'm diving that deep into the difference between blame and responsibility. I'm focused mainly this morning on that experience of being blamed and working at having some strategies for us to stay at peace. Because what do we do in a world of conflict and blame and finger pointing? Often the very best we can do is try to keep ourselves somewhat grounded, able to bring ourselves back to center. So on that note, this is sometimes what blame looks like, and we're not going to stay there very long looking at her, because I can start to feel myself starting to feel agitated and wanting to defend as soon as I see a face like this. Of course, this is exaggerated. So we start with the definition of blame. And blame is what this definition says: holding someone responsible for doing something badly or wrongly, saying that someone is responsible for something, whether they are indeed responsible or capable of making changes. Sometimes we are, sometimes we're blamed, and we need to say, yes, I am responsible for that. But why do people blame, particularly unrealistically, out of the box of holding accountable? And here are some reasons. Communication styles. Now, many people have a very assertive communication style. This guy's got kind of a humorous communication style, and this gal isn't really receiving it, or she's going to get annoyed if he continues with that communication style and maybe blame him for interrupting a pleasant evening out. Often our values are perceived as violated. So I had a discussion years ago with somebody who wanted me to fire somebody. And this person said, don't you value excellence? And I said, I value excellence, but I value even more human dignity. And the way you are suggesting I handle this situation is shaming and blaming. And I allowed the employee to write a letter of resignation, and I helped her with it. And I explained why we needed to have this person exit from the position. So two values were colliding together in that meeting. Beliefs are perceived as violated or challenged. People can get triggered about their faith if we start to do certain things. Maybe we're very innocent of knowing about them. I can remember turning up at an Indigenous celebration, and I was wearing heeled shoes, and one of the people was feeling offended and said, you don't need to be elevating yourself off the earth. I felt blame, but it was just her tone. That sometimes tone can have a sense of blame in it, and I didn't know, and I learned a lot about moccasins and planting our feet on the earth. Personalities clash. Oh, this happens over and over again. The person who's naturally messy compared to the person who's naturally a neat freak. The optimist compared to the pessimist. The introvert compared to the extrovert. I mean, the dog is so extroverted and wants to be playful and have interaction, and the cat wants quiet time. This is my husband and me oftentimes. So personalities can end up creating an agitation that pops out as blame. Goals and priorities are perceived as being sabotaged. Somebody may be working very, very hard at a goal, and all of a sudden somebody says, oh, we've cut the funding for that, or that's no longer on the table. And then people's feelings get agitated. Might be an injustice or unfairness is perceived. And of course, we're seeing this on the news regularly with the whole Palestinian-Israel conflict. Influence or control is perceived as less than. So I may perceive that somebody has more power and control than me, and I want to make a decision. Now, this can happen in the home, in the office, it can happen anywhere. I want the piece of wood that's got too much wood in our house. I want it painted a pretty blue. And who's gonna have the power and control to decide whether it gets painted or not? I'm actually seeing two women right now who husbands do not let them have any control or power over finances. Can you imagine lining up at the bay and having your husband put the bra on the counter and pay for it because the woman does not have any power control over finances? So that's some of these perceptions are real. Unresolved resentments, issues, or trauma surface. Often people blame out of a frustration that bubbles up that's got nothing to do with you. It often has to do with dysfunctional patterns of thinking that got established long ago from traumatic events. One of my classics is I had a father who created childhood or complex trauma for me by repeatedly calling me stupid. Then I'm a family counselor and my manager gives me back a report and says, Patricia, there's a couple errors in here, please correct them. And I hear, you're stupid. And I end up going into a defensive mode. So I feel blamed where it's not really being blamed. So we have to watch the dynamics. High stress overflows. When people are in high distress, their prefrontal cortex, their logical thinking is not intact, and so they often behave poorly. And cultural backgrounds clash. Again, we're seeing this on the news regularly. And empathy for others is low. And there tends to be a sense of being bullied, or bullying actually happens in the framework of being blamed or being held responsible for aspects of our lives that we can't change. By the way, a good test for blame, bullying, criticizing is, does the person that you're blaming, criticizing, bullying have the power and control to change? to change the circumstances. So if somebody is bullied, for example, because they have a hair lip, or because they're a different color of skin, or because they're shorter, or because they're geekier, or they have buck teeth, whatever it is something that they can change. Not fair, and it is bullying and unrealistic. Blaming. And what is the motivation to blame? It's to cover up our pain, typically. Now, there are exceptions, but blaming often comes out of some kind of pain. Why is this important for us? Because hopefully we can see people almost as if they're little babies who got their fingers pinched when they are unrealistically doing this blaming. I'm a big fan of nonviolent communication. Marshall Rosenberg has a series of books on nonviolent communication, and he did global negotiations around peace. Regrettably, he died in 2015. I'm going to be sharing with you a number of his quotations. Here's one. When somebody's telling you what's wrong with you, the truth is they have a need that isn't getting met. Hear that they are in pain. So people blame others too, and I'm hoping to prove the case that people are in blame typically when they are blaming. To express anger or frustration, so they're expressing feelings of anger or frustration. They're attempting to soothe feelings of hurt. They're defending themselves against feeling helpless about a situation. They're trying to calm feelings of fear that they themselves will be blamed. You know, there are blame owners, there are blame throwers. Some people walk in an elevator and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry," as if they were blamed for something. Tend to take responsibility where it's not theirs. Problem ownership. And then there are blame throwers that look to throw blame in people's faces, often to defend themselves from being blamed. They perceive they will be blamed. And avoid feeling shame or guilt for their own poor actions. You can see how often the word feeling is in these sentences. So blame, especially when it feels like it's out of control, blame is coming out of those feelings. And the number one feeling that masks all the pain is anger. It looks like they're angry. When people blame, it looks like they're angry, but anger is a secondary emotion, and it masks all those other feelings that were just listed. By the way, all this information is in the session guide for you. So anger masks pain and fuels blame. Blame fuels conflict and makes effective problem solving difficult. So what do? We're going to cover that as well. Basically supporting people in their anger management, right? So basically we're saying the blame game ends in more pain. So you and I might get triggered by the blame, and then we're in pain. Blame looks like criticizing, bullying, name calling, ordering, demeaning. It also looks like being the persecutor, the blamer, in the drama triangle. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the drama triangle. I've talked about the drama triangle in other sessions with Maskey's Cultural College. And basically, all conflict fits into the drama triangle. Somebody ends up feeling like a victim. Somebody ends up trying to rescue. Somebody tries to blame. It might not be somebody ending up in victim or rescue, but when conflicts cycle round and round and round and keep going and going and going, typically people are playing one of these roles. Playing means acting in one of these roles of a blamer, roles of a rescuer, roles of a victim. It's all explained in an article on my website. And in that article, this again is on the session guide, is a poster you can download to help you stay out of the drama triangle. stop you from rescuing people that may feel like a victim because of blaming, and or trying to stop the rescuer, or pardon me, stop the blamer. Yes, again, all of this information is in the session guide with a link to the article. So regrettably, conflict, blame, and sometimes escalated into domestic violence is happening everywhere in the world, including Canada. I'm located in Alberta. Alberta has the third highest province of domestic violence happening here. Is in our homes. So again, we can bring peace if we can learn to bring more resolution to the conflict we have in homes. Conflict is inevitable, by the way. But here's a statistic from Statistics Canada from 2019. I'm sure it got worse during COVID. And that is that in 2019, the police reported 131,500 incidences of family violence. And in that, 79% was common assault. Assault, my goodness. So it's happening in our homes as well as, let me just turn my email off here. Oh, shit. Okay. Did I say something rude? Sorry. I don't want to hear that buzzing. Okay, I have a little quiz for you in the chat box. And away we go. Here we go. This has to do with the workplace. And this is from a 2008 global study of, I think it was 9 countries with something like 5,000 employees. And the results were, what percentage of employees reported they must deal with some conflict? Was it 85% of the time they were dealing with conflict, 56% of the time they were dealing with conflict, or 29% of the time they were dealing with conflict? And so just put in number 1, number 2, number 3. Let us know number 1, number 2, number 3. Dort, what your best guess is of what percentage of time employees in this study reported that they were dealing with some kind of conflict. And Manisha, you can let me know what door number wins the prize.
1 and 2 equal, like it's most people have selected 1 or 2.
1 or 2? Okay, so drum roll, please. 85% must deal with some conflict. Now, interestingly enough, in the country of Germany, it was reported that 56% of the time in Germany, it was frequently. They reported frequently we have to deal with conflict. And in the US, it was 36% of the time we have to frequently deal with conflict. So you're not alone if you're experiencing conflict in the workplace. And managers, leaders end up being responsible for conflict between themselves and those people that report to them, as well as conflict between their reportees, which is a significant responsibility for leadership. Now, those employees, I have to explain this, 76%, those employees that witnessed conflict leading to a positive outcome was 76%. When the conflict was resolved, there was better understanding of one another and better workplace solutions. So sometimes when we have conflict, and it's often a healthy thing, it's when we want to eliminate the blame from conflict if we can. Certainly blame triggers conflict very, very quickly. But we can have conflict when we have disagreement. That does not have to be out of control. Blame often indicates that the conflict is getting out of control. So better understanding of others and better workplace solutions came out of some conflict in the workplace. And out of the leaders that were trained, let me say it again, conflict resolution trained, yes. So out of the 5,000 people that were interviewed, 44% were trained in conflict resolution. And the leaders, managers, bosses that were trained in conflict resolution reported that it helped resolve conflict 95% of the time. Now, true conflict training is 1, 2, 3 days long, not a few minutes like we're having this morning. So I'm just giving you a taste to get you started around this. Well, don't expect because you spent a little bit of time with me this morning that you're going to be able to be really, really effective, but you will certainly get some tips that will be helpful. That's my intention. Okay, so how do we minimize the blame game? So if we take a look at all this information up here that we've already gone through, let me ask you what idea you might have for resolving or minimizing the blame and conflict. So minimizing it before it gets all fired up. We've talked about why people end up blaming. And I just want to know if you have some ideas about how we might minimize the blame game, understanding that it's often fueled out of emotions, particularly anger. I'll just wait 30 seconds here. Manisha, let me know if anybody's writing in the chat box. Nope, I don't see anything. Empathetic listening, asking. Very good.
Yes.
You won a prize. I don't know what it is yet. Focus on
Speak,
the
there is a speak in we instead of targeting I.
right. Yes. All very
Focus on the problem.
Yes, right. Okay. All right, we got some smart cookies online. Thank you, Carolyn. Nice to see you here, Carolyn. Good points. I agree with those. Okay, excellent. Let's move on. Thank you. So, Carrie Patterson is one of the authors of Crucial Conversations, and this is a quotation from, I don't know that it's a woman or man. I just know that it's one of the authors of Crucial Conversations. And I had Crucial Conversations kicking around here a few minutes ago. Okay, as much as others may need to change, or we may want them to change, the only person we can continually inspire, prod, and shape with any degree of success is the person in the mirror, you and me. So, going over what we just discussed, stay out of the drama triangle. So if you don't have the drama triangle, please consider downloading it and reading the article that offers tips on how to use the drama triangle. And my own mother, before she died, put this in front of her phone so that she tended to be a rescuer, so that she'd say, I have 10 minutes to talk to you or listen to your problem. Put some boundaries around it. So yeah, try to stay out of the drama triangle. We all end up there, but we can get back. Notice and attend to emotional states. And again, this is related to empathetic listening, as somebody else already mentioned. Listen to find out their needs or wants. When people get angry, any of the emotions, there is a strong emotional state indicates there's a need or want that is unmet. So that's what we're looking for. And we can call that lack of needs or wants the problem. I'll give you an example in a minute. Check for understanding of agreements. People often feel violated. They have one idea about what was agreed and somebody else has another idea about what's agreed. I ask my husband every Sunday morning, even though I usually know the answer, what time are we going out the door for Sunday service? Because sometimes he thinks he's all there waiting with his foot tapping, and I can see he's agitated, and he's going to blame me for us being late if I'm not at the door at the right time. The simple little agreements like that can make a huge difference. Where's the agreement of where we keep the file? What's the agreement of when this project is supposed to be completed? Who's doing what? You go through a checklist of understanding. And yes, this also in the home. Who's supposed to do what tasks? Who's responsible for emptying the dishwasher? And when? What's the agreement? Clearly communicate expectations, roles, and responsibilities. Again, home and in the workplace. Do we have our roles clear about who does what, when, and often how? And be inclusive in defining common goals and responsibilities. Number 7 reminds me that I'm a big fan of family meetings. Once you have children, 6 years and older, I highly recommend having family meetings. No other group of people think they are going to have mutual goals and share responsibilities for the home without having regular meetings to talk about what's working with us and what's not working and what will we change and do differently. And by the way, there's a lovely article with sort of a framework of having family meetings. I recommend that if you don't have them every week, you have them at least once a month to check in with one another. And of course, in the workplace, we have regular meetings. Sometimes they're too long and too efficient. It really is helpful to know basically who's expected to do what, when, and how. Encourage diversity of ideas and perspectives. And so that has to do with brainstorming and honoring other people's ideas, and then doing perhaps a SWOT analysis or a advantages and disadvantages analysis, and then choosing a best solution. And model flexibility and adaptation to change yourself. Be willing to make some changes that if they don't affect other people or the organization without having to go higher up or breaking any rules. Here's some specifics for the workplace. Implement communication, listening, and conflict resolution training, as we just saw before in the statistics. Having some people in your organization that are trained really minimizes the blame game and also makes for constructive conflict resolution. Have trained leadership, manage conflict early on, not waiting too long. It's like fuel on a fire when we don't attend to it soon enough. And again, we can see this on the world stage. And create procedures for regular, timely, and specific feedback. And highly support positive and collaborative types of behavior. And provide support. This is from Dr. Sidney Simon. This is how he used to do his supervision time with people who worked underneath him at the university. He would say, tell me what's going well. And he would listen and he would thank them and congratulate the employee. And number 2, he had said, what are you struggling with? And the person would tell him what they were struggling with, and he might give a few little hints of what they were struggling with. So I understand, you're kind of struggling with that project. Am I hearing that right? And then he would say, how can I help? Just such a non-blaming way to provide feedback and structure. So I just listed a number of these strategies, and would you just you already put in some great strategies about listening. And what else do we have here? Empathetic listening, speak in we instead of I. Yeah, saying we have a problem is much nicer than saying you are the problem or you have a problem. Even better is I have a problem. Will you help me with it? And seeking the unmet needs behind. Yeah, seeking the unmet needs behind. Excellent. What other ideas did we just share that you might put into action? Thank you for that, Jen, by the way. Yeah. Getting more robust conflict training. Yes, great. I like the word robust. Sounds strong. Got a happy face. Okay. All right, let's move on here. I'm going to move into some more specifics of if you yourself particularly are experiencing being blamed. So handle blame with a powerful response. So how do we do that? Thomas Crum is well known for his conflict resolution skills. There's actually something called the Thomas Crum strategy, which is how to handle conflict. He says the quality of our lives depends not on whether or not we have conflicts, but on how we respond to them. But wham! I don't know about you, but sometimes a blame comes sideways. Wham! Just put a check mark or a Y or something in the chat box if you've ever had that experience. Like, wham! It's like, bingo, right? Right. Just comes at you and you go, oh my goodness. That's my experience of blame, whether when I was a kid and I got blamed, or whether I was in high school and I got blamed, or whether I was in the workplace. And I had a recent experience where I'm doing a counseling session, and all of a sudden the client erupted and was furious at me. This one did require me to make an apology. I kept calling him the wrong name. And this was like not the first session I'd seen him. I kept calling, and I called his girlfriend, who was not here. I've never met her, but he's talked lots about her. And wham! And you never remember my name, and that's so disrespectful. And you, I went, oh my good, lots of yous. Yeah, lots of yous. But yeah, very true. Wham. So what do? I was actually quite proud of myself. I'll tell you the end of that story in a minute. Return to center. So what we need to do, that's the first step. Unless you didn't get pushed off of your grounded, centered, wise, adult, best self. If you manage to stay there, I congratulate you. But for me, that one was a wham that took me off center. And I did catch myself soon enough while the rant was still going on to tell myself to return to center. Now, how do you do that? Here we go. You create a wider space between what you're experiencing and your response. Viktor Frankl, survivor of the Holocaust, a beautiful man who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, one of the most classic books that's required in Psychology 101, said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So what do? We do nothing. I sat there, I kind of like nodded my head, say nothing, do nothing. It may feel like eternity, but often it's only 1 or 2 minutes. Then notice your body sensations. For me, my shoulders kind of go up, sometimes my hands clench, my stomach, often a knot is formed in my stomach. Notice the body sensations. Inhale into and do this right now. If this would help you picture that wham moment for you. Just put your left hand or your right hand on your belly and let the breath go in your belly. I actually put my hand, I was sitting, so it was easy to put my hand on my belly and watch the breath go into the belly. Recognize and name the emotion. Shock. I actually felt some shame, embarrassment, could feel some heat coming to my face, right? And then on the exhale, Notice some calming, just sort of like butter melting, calming. This, if you practice this, do nothing, stay still, and just practice. Remember, here's a little practice for you. Recall a time where you had some heated blame come your way. Remember it and do this little exercise. Practice it so it's readily available to you for the next time you have a wham of blame. Okay? If you're not triggered, then you go to step 2. All right? So once you get yourself back to center, you'll go to step 2. Now, if you're still challenged to get to center, practicing this little tool of the breathing, please consider getting my book, which just got released this summer, called Return to Center. And it's all about emotional regulation. It's all about creating emotionally safe spaces. It's all about taking care of yourself in challenging situations. And it's less than $10 if you go to my website and choose the book format. If you'd like the hard copy, I'd be glad to mail it to you. So yes, please consider a little investment in yourself. Okay, step 2, listen with curiosity. Curiosity. Indicate you are ready to listen. I highly recommend that you sit down. Usually if we sit down, the other party will sit down with us. And even if we put our hand out, the other person typically will sit down. I'm listening. Acknowledge their feelings. I hear you feel angry. That's usually where it starts. If this is a wham blame situation. Yeah, I hear you feel angry. Remember that anger is a secondary emotion. So we're going to work at getting down underneath the core feelings, which then are the seed of what is the want or need, which is the problem. Then you affirm. It makes sense that you feel angry if you view this decision as unfair. And often unfairness is one of the lists of why people blame. Is, you can acknowledge it. And then option, you can say, tell me more about this decision being unfair. Then you reflect emotions under the anger. I imagine you feel hurt that this happened unfairly to you. And if they nod their head, sometimes you have to stay longer at anger. Anger's got a lot of charged emotion, charged energy. And once it starts to come down, sometimes there's indicators like, a tear in the eye, and you can say, I imagine you feel hurt that this was so unfair, right? And then seek to find the need or want. You can sometimes, it doesn't matter if you're off. People just appreciate that you're seeking to understand. And as you're seeking to understand, it's helping them understand what was going on for them, because they've lost their prefrontal cortex. And in the listening, once that charged energy starts to calm, the ability to think logically and to connect with you return to center. So we're helping this individual to return to center. We've got 2 people that are triggered. We're just going to have more conflict. But if you can either bring yourself back to centered and welcome them to come back to centered, then we have conflict resolution opportunities. So seek to find the need or want. I hear you feel scared. You can't support your family on your present income. And then you validate. I imagine that was hard to share, and it helps me to understand. So you're validating that somebody is coming back and making connection, and that you're trying to understand. But what if somebody is like this? What if somebody says, no, you are the problem. You are the problem. You treat me unfair and you have to leave, not me. Blah, blah. So, let's not stay in her face too long. But if that happens, use what's called a DRT. So diffuse. I hear you feel hurt and I promise I will review the decision or whatever. And maybe it's back to anger. I hear you feel angry, maybe because it's just not going anywhere and they're keeping themselves charged. Number two, reason. Right now, this conversation is not going anywhere positive, or right now, neither of us are in any state to solve this. Whatever. Right now, this isn't working. And then I will be in my office at 11 a.m. and we can continue this discussion then, and you shut it down. Because if you're sitting here with your prefrontal cortex on, welcoming conflict resolution, and this person's still doing their dance, you're not going to get anywhere. So you shut it down. 3 is if they do come back connection with you when the blamer has returned to center and you do the problem solving. Reframe the unfilled need or want. That's the problem. Do I understand the problem is you need some income to support your family and need a promotion like Joe got. That's why this unfairness got triggered so badly. I mean, sometimes we're treated differently than other people and it doesn't trigger us. And other times we do. Usually there's an underlying reason. And then you brainstorm solutions, and then you choose the best idea. And define specific commitments, actions, and responsibilities. Now, do you apologize? I apologized. I took responsibility for not remembering his name. I mean, calling somebody by their proper name, the name they want to be called. I mean, I was way off. This guy reminded me of somebody else I knew, was way off. And it was disrespectful, especially when I'm responsible for creating an emotionally safe space. So I apologized, but I'm very proud of myself. I took it another step further. I said to him, what was it like for you to be assertive? I didn't say aggressive. He started off aggressive, but he moved to being assertive. I said, what was it like for you to be assertive with me? And then he started to cry and he said, I've never been assertive with anybody. Oh my goodness. He took a huge risk. And maybe it wasn't a risk for him. Maybe he just bubbled up because it was so emotionally safe for him with me. And I hope he takes that into his life where he doesn't treat himself very well and lets people, including his girlfriend, treat him poorly. So that possibility, that moment that I was able to stay centered, take it, allow him to say what he needed to say on his own behalf, and then bring it to resolution. I actually took his file in a great big marker and wrote his name on the outside of it as proof to him and me that I indeed wanted to make amends. So there are places to make amends. Other times you have nothing to apologize for. You can acknowledge you're hurting. There's nothing necessarily to acknowledge, thank you for letting me know that that's a problem for you. That's a personal decision. Bonus, I like to offer bonus in the session guide is the Thomas Kilmann conflict mode instrument. And there's a link that you can go and assess what your preferred style of dealing with conflict is, whether it's competing, collaborating, compromising, avoiding, or accommodating. So there's different ways of handling, and sometimes we use them all. But there you can see they're on an assertiveness to cooperativeness scale, and they can get you can get to be competing. There is a time to compete, right? If you're in some kind of contest, there are times, and there's times to accommodate, to give in to somebody else, and there are the times to compromise. You get a little bit and I get a little bit. There's times to avoid. If somebody is physically dangerous, ooh, no, avoid. So that's in your session guide, and please consider taking the little quiz that's available to you. And I wish may peace begin with us to conclude this little section. Now, People sent me questions. How does this differ from crucial conversations and seeking mutual understanding? Some of the strategies in Crucial Conversations, it's a classic book. I did take the training years ago and have the book. So certainly get it. It's got certain strategies in it. I'm a big fan of Marshall Goldenberg because he's so kind, and his aim is for peace. So everybody's got their favorite. It has to resonate with you. How does one deal with being blindsided in a public forum? In the moment, is it better to stay silent if one is not properly prepared to respond effectively? I find that having this line has saved my butt a number of times. As a professional speaker, I've often been challenged by somebody in the audience, and I just say, thank you for sharing. That's it. Thank you for sharing. And then I say, if you'd like to talk more, we can talk later. Okay. Get some line in your head that's not too many sentences that you can just say very quickly, very clearly, and then know that it's okay that you got off center and that you have the skills and the tools. If you don't have them, you can gain them by coming back to center. And how do I acknowledge but not apologize? I think I covered that. I see that you're in pain, or I see that you're feeling angry. I see that, I hear that. Now you're always guessing. You don't know people's feelings for sure. Always, always, always acknowledging how people think, what they want, what their problem is. I hear you've got a problem. And if it is genuinely both of your problems, yes, we have a problem. Say we as often as you can. Okay, somebody asked about working with policies and collective agreements. I'm not an expert in that. I'm not even an expert in conflict resolution. I just know enough that it helps my counseling practice. Valerie Cade Lee, sometimes she calls herself Valerie Cade and sometimes Valerie Cade Lee. Anyway, Valerie Cade has a book called Bully Free at the Work, and she does help big organizations all over North America put in anti-bullying policies, and that bullying really is aligned with blaming. So do look for her book, Bully Free at Work. Valerie, she lives in Calgary. She's a friend of mine. Very solid work she does. Her website has some good free resources on it. Okay. And another bonus here is if it would be helpful for you to deepen your listening and curiosity quotient and your support of people in emotional needs. Remember, blaming typically, there are always exceptions, typically comes from a place of underneath that anger of some pain and woundedness. And I would gladly email you 4 forms of support. Be glad to do that.